And there it is. There's the signal, the bright red box with the white letters that says live. Oh, I mean live. Yes, we are live. We are live together
And
on
we need to live.
We
We need
do.
to live. That's we're called to live.
Living is good. It's better than the alternative, or so I've been told. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
Yeah, we don't really know. We haven't experienced the other side of living, but
No, not yet. But we are here together again. This is Steve O'Hays, and I am Joseph Mojo McCarthy. And together, we are the old school nerds. And as we like to say, we were nerds before nerds were cool.
we're cool. Yes.
Right? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm down in your neck of the woods. I'm sad that we haven't been able to hook up on this trip. I was hoping to be able to stop by and see you. It just didn't work out this time, but it's hard to be this close to you, Joe, and not hang out with you in person. It would have been cool to record this live in the same room, huh?
We will do that. Well, we've had a chance to do that in the past, and we will do it again, no doubt.
We've actually did some recording too. Remember, we recorded Knott's Berry Farm. We recorded at our other brother studio, Pacers Productions, and the Knott's Berry Farm. It was a windy day, and it didn't turn out well. And then the Pacer Productions is all sitting on my hard drive.
I think we recorded at a golf course one day too. We didn't even golf. We just
we did. You're right, and that was super windy. That day didn't work out at all. But yeah, we were going to go golfing. That's right. And then we started recording, and we said, "Forget golfing. We're going to do what we really love to do, what we're good at." Well, I don't know if we're good, but I think I'm better at talking than I am at golfing. That's for sure. I will say that.
We're good at being windy, apparently, because every time we're together, it is windy.
Well said. Well said.
Well, before we jump into this conversation, Steve-O, introduce yourself to those that haven't met you before. Let them know a little bit about yourself and about your studio.
The little elevator speech. I am Steve Hayes. I'm a happypreneur. I'm here to help you navigate, activate, and advocate your happy life. I'm here to help you find what makes you truly happy, then walk alongside you and turn that thing on. I'm a messenger, got a message to spread. So we're out of Happy Life Studios. We do that through live talks. We do that through online stuff. We do it through coaching. Any way that we can help. Help is an acronym that I use for my life. It's my I guess you'd call it my life mission, but it's an acronym that stands for I'm here to help or bring healing. I'm here to help by bringing healing, encouragement, making people laugh, and making people ponder. And so we started Happy Life Studios 13, 15 years ago, something like that, to just take this message and spread it online. And we're based in the Seattle area.
And you say we, are you talking about a corporation of 500 to 1,000 people? Or
yes, I am. And they're all inside of my brain. So I'm, roses are red, violets are blue. I'm schizophrenic, and so am I. So no, it's just me and my wife, really, and my and I've got several other people, even like yourself, that help me, but nothing on the official side of things. We're a very small operation. We don't have money if we had money to hire people, there's all sorts of people that I would hire, would be great, but I can't afford to do that. Just probably like Mojo Studio, I imagine. Tell us a little bit about Mojo Studio, Joe.
Sure. Well, Mojo Studio actually is a spinoff in many ways of Happy Life Studio, because during the pandemic, when I was feeling quite caged and stir crazy, I came across some of your brilliant stuff on Happy Life via social media, and you talked a lot about your podcast. And how many episodes now, Steve, have you put out on your podcast?
We're like 400, and I'm on 400 and on 2 coming out, but I also have done a couple dozen, 2 or 3 dozen of other podcasts where we've done with you, all the old school nerds in there. They're not included in the 402. The modern day alchemists that we do with the amazing, incredible Kristen Brown are not on there. My Limelight ones are not on there. My summer camp series is not on there. So I've started several other podcasts for other people as well. That, in fact, that's what I'm doing down here in the Ventura area, talking about someone else that helped them start their podcast called Hope for the Hurting. And we just want to increase, we want to increase the light. We want to fight darkness by turning a light on. Anyway, I'm taking away the Mojo Studio. I answered your question, but we're still on Mojo Studio. So,
well, as I was saying, Mojo Studio really was inspired by Happy Life Studio. And when I saw you and hadn't really spoken with you since our college days, I reached out and said, hey, tell me about this podcasting stuff, because you're just doing some amazing stuff. And I think I've got a message to share as well. And that connection was a blessing. And it was just like we stepped right into the past,
Yeah.
picked up right where we left off, found so many commonalities. Even though time had passed, we were still good friends way down deep. And you walked me into the world of podcasting, and so I'm ever grateful for that. And ever since, between the podcasting and videos that we do, conversations we have together and alone, both of us, as you have said, you've helped to multiply and amplify the message of others who have that same mission of bringing light into a dark world, bringing joy into a bland world. And you do that brilliantly, and you inspired me to as well. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you are based in good old Orange County area, right?
Orange County, California, right?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
It's funny you said you're close by, although miles and hours, not so much, even though you are in Southern
Yeah.
California,
Right.
which is closer than you are when you're normally back up in the great Northwest.
Yeah, I guess most people would think when I say close by, I mean, I travel for a living, or I used to a lot more than I do now. But I mean, dude, I'll drive 6 hours just to get home at night sometimes. Like I won't stay overnight. But for a lot of people, an hour or two is a long ways away. But when you come from Seattle, I mean, how far are you from Ventura? Probably 2 hours, maybe? Hour and a half?
2 hours if there were no cars on the road, but that's never the case.
So that's the truth, man. I can't believe it. I get mad sometimes. Like when I'm coming home from speaking somewhere, or maybe sometimes I sometimes I speak in churches. I do a lot of my speaking in churches actually. And by the time I get back to where I'm staying, hours away, like how can there be traffic? It's 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, or it will be 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I run into traffic. I'm going, LA, man, what is up with you guys? It's like you said, there's never. It's rare when you find no traffic. It's like, what is going on? What kind of tragedy has happened that I'm out here on the road all by myself?
Right. Somehow I got right ahead of that break that the highway patrol is doing for something else.
Right.
And that's smooth sailing, which
Right.
usually I'm on the back side of that, not the
Yeah.
front side. So when that does happen, I am grateful. And as you know, Steve, I grew up in Montana. And so traffic is a completely different word out in Southern California than it is back home, which means, that the tractor somehow got out on the highway and slowed everybody up just a little
for
bit.
3 miles,
Yeah.
for 3 miles. And then,
Turns out that was my dad.
And let's not even talk about the parking spaces where you can actually park a truck and a
Right.
half in it. You could live in a parking space. Down here, man, you can hardly park a motorcycle in these parking spaces. I mean, you got to be careful, open up your door, because it's hardly.
Yeah, they do use the word compact around here quite a bit, and it's
Yeah.
more like a compactor, really.
Right. That's good. That's really good. In fact, and there's never compact cars in there either, whatever that even means anymore. Everyone parks in it, like parking's at a premium out here. So you see a spot, I don't care if it says park, compact or whatever in there. I'm pulling this sucker in there.
Right. How many times have I seen, a giant Excursion or a Hummer in a
Right.
compact spot?
You're like, what do they do? Climb out the sunroof? How do they get out of there? They didn't
Yeah.
open up the doors. Yeah.
It turns out they end up taking 3 spaces because they're parking on the lines on both sides of one space.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And that, just the idea of parking and spaces and traffic, it's all relative to where you are. Speaking of which, so let's, I love this topic today because we get to dive into a little bit of your story and how you've ended up to where you are today. That's, well, there's no way we can cover all the details, of course, but I'd love to introduce and talk today, Steve, about some of the things in your life that have helped shape who you've become. Because I don't know a ton of people that have committed their life to making the world a happier place in the same intention that you have, where your brain, if it's awake and it's on, it's thinking of what can I do? What can I say? What designs can I create? What jokes can I come up with to bring a smile to someone's face, to make the world a happier place in your sphere of influence, which of course, now that your podcasting has grown quite a bit. But you didn't start out that way, right? You weren't a podcaster at age 5.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about your origin story, because as I like to put in the topic here, our origin stories is what makes us all original, because even though we do have stuff in common as humans, which helps us to relate to each other, we also have this very uniquely ours, this priceless story that is ours, that the way that you grew up and how you grew up and the way you interpreted that and adopted it and twisted it and morphed it through your education, your experience, your expertise, all of that had to work together to create who we know now as Steve Hayes. But we all have an origin story where we came from, and I'd love to hear some of the milestones and the memories that stand out to you that were really that helped shape who you've become.
Right on, right on. So where do you want me to start? Was there a question there somewhere? Because I
No,
missed
I
it.
think that was just rambling.
Okay, all right. Well, that wasn't rambling at all. That all had a point to it, but I don't know if you pause for a second because you know I always have something to say, and I actually guess I didn't.
Well, let's go back and talk a little bit about your childhood, Steve. Let people know where you grew up and kind of what the environment in your household was. Give people a glimpse into the young Steve-O, you kind of the elementary days.
I'd be what you would call a PK, a problem kid. I mean, preacher's kid.
Right.
And
Which,
I
right.
had a tremendous family. I was blessed in that way, brother and sister, and we had a great family. My family was they just loved each other and all that type of stuff. The only thing would be that, but except the only thing was my dad was a very quiet man. His father left him when he was a child,
Hmm.
and because my dad was a quiet man, and I'm obviously not a quiet human, words of encouragement are my love language. My dad didn't talk a lot. And I remember many times I wanted to talk to my dad. I just wish I could. My poor kids, because of that, I think I've driven them crazy because I want to talk to them all the time. They don't know what it's like to have a dad that, you know. So I remember laying in bed a lot of times going, man, I wish I could talk to my dad. And I probably could have. I just would have said something, but I didn't know how to broach that topic. And my dad was a typical guy who just didn't talk much. And a lot of my roommates in college were guys that also didn't talk much. And come to find out later, they grew up without a father too. So that's just kind of goes with the territory. Well, because of that, and because I'm a feeler, they put me in school at a younger age. So I was
Hmm.
the youngest kid in my class. On top of that, I hit puberty late. On top of that, I wasn't much of I wasn't an athlete at all. You and I both went to school. Like we said, we were nerds before nerds were cool. And we both went to school when bullying was the in thing. It wasn't
Hmm.
something, it was something you were proud of. I mean, we had teachers that would bully us, you know, and the typical, all the movies make fun of these guys, but we lived that, you know.
Hmm.
So I was pretty uncoordinated. I was very insecure. My dad didn't talk to me a whole lot. And what changed my life was really another human. It was a student and it was a teacher. And they both are right around the same time. I was in high school and I got paired up in my music. I was a pretty good musician, which also hurt or helped the nerd image, right?
Hmm.
Choir boys now, I mean, men singers, boys singers, I mean, all these groups that we were around before, right? We remember when New Kids on the Block came out, Boys to Men. I mean, it wasn't cool to be a singer, a tenor singer, or now it is. It wasn't when I was growing up. So me being a singer didn't help. I was in band, I was in choir, and I got paired up with this girl who was a cheerleader. She was popular. She was gorgeous. She was so pretty. And I wanted one thing in high school, and that was to be popular. And she was. But I knew popular people made fun of people like me.
Hmm.
So we'd
Yeah.
have to practice together. And every week she'd try to get me to talk, but I'm not going to talk because the moment I speak, then I open myself up to be vulnerable like I have in the past. And that's when they make fun of you. And that's when you feel like a total loser. For some reason, you feel like if I at least cut my walls up and they made fun of me, I at least didn't open myself up. So I wouldn't talk to her for weeks. It must have been a month and a half or so. And pretty soon it was so awkward for her that she brought her friend in. And I'm like, dude, now there's two girls to one. This is working pretty pretty well for me, you
Yeah.
know. But I remember one day we weren't going to sing until she was kept pushing it. And she kept saying, why won't you talk to me? And after about a month and a half, it just wore me down. I thought I might be able to trust her. You know,
Hmm.
she's really trying to get me to communicate with her. And I said, well, because I'm a nerd. And she didn't even bat an eye, Joe. She just said, you're not a nerd. I don't think you're a nerd. And that little one sentence, I went home and I couldn't stop thinking about that. Right around the same time, I had a teacher that she was my music teacher, and I would do lessons, music lessons in her office, you know, during school. And at one point she said, Steve, she got personal too. She said, you know what? You're so funny when you're in my office. You're so fun. But when you leave my office, you turn into somebody else. And I was the wallflower. I would say before there was Steve Urkel, there was Steve Hayes. And
Hmm.
so, you know, I would go out in the hallway and I was the kid that had the kick me signs on the back. And it's always funny when it's Steve Urkel because he gets a check at the end of the day. He goes home and gets a fat
Yeah,
check for being a nerd. I didn't
right.
get a
Gets
check.
famous. Yeah.
Yeah. And man, if social media would have been around when I was a kid, number one, we'd be viral. You and I both would be viral, the things that we did. But also, number two, it might have destroyed me. I never might have made it to the viral stage because at least I could leave that at school.
Hmm.
And kids made fun of me all the time. They knocked the trombone out of my hand all the time, the books out of my hand. And everyone would laugh. And I would laugh too, because what else are you supposed to do? Cry?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I tried being friends with the tough kids because I didn't want them to beat me up. They still beat me up, but it was a playful beat up. And I guess that's somehow different. I don't know how. I tried to be friends with a popular kid just so I could be popular. And I just didn't fit anywhere. I had one friend in high school and we hung out together all the time. And so anyway, she said, but when you leave my office, she said, you don't act like this. You're not fun. You're not. And when I was around my church group, I had all sorts of confidence because I was a preacher's kid and I was the life of the party. But when I was in school, man, I just pulled back into my cave. And she said, why won't you be yourself when you leave my office? Because I think people would love that. You're just an amazing human. And I said, because people will laugh at me. She said, well, she said before, why will you not be yourself? And I said, well, because everyone laughs at me. She says, but if you would just become yourself, people would love you. Why won't you just be yourself? I said, well, because people laugh at me. And she said, well, you said they're laughing at you anyway. They might as
Mhm.
well laugh at the real you. And that
Mm.
combined with Michelle, her comments to me, I started saying, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out swinging. I'm at least
Mhm.
going to be who I am. And I started not caring what people thought, and I started being myself. And so that's where the nerd image came from. And real quick, because I'm afraid you won't ask this question, I'll forget to say it, but it's kind of the point of what I'm getting to here. There came another point in my life where I came across a story from it's thousands of years old. It's actually in the Bible. And there was a man by the name of Benaiah, and he was this warrior. And he came across this man that was way bigger than him. The Bible called him a giant. And so not only is he facing a man way bigger than him, but secondly, this man had a weapon. He had this great big huge spear that was just the way the story explained it. I mean, it was just the shaft was it was just this huge spear because this was a giant of a man.
Right.
And then on top of that, Benaiah had no weapon. So that giant, that huge man was his enemy, and they were sworn enemies. Their races didn't get along with each other. So now he's stuck, right? So what would he do? He would just normally give up. Well, in the story, the Bible says that Benaiah he didn't have a weapon, so he stole the weapon from the giant and killed him with his own weapon. So I read that and I just got this thing inside of my brain, inside of my heart. And I just said, so that's what I do with nerds. I started dressing up like a nerd. I started wearing all my nerd clothes, but I started wearing them on purpose now. Um, and the reason I do that, and even when I go speak places, I still have this lime green suit. That's a whole nother story in itself. But I dress up like a nerd. I call myself a nerd because that image and now it's not even nerd, it's more that insecurity. There's a lot of people that struggle with insecurity.
Right.
And so now I want to take that tool, that weapon that was used against me for so many years to make me feel like I wasn't worth anything, that I was just a stupid nerd that didn't matter in life. Now I want to take that very same concept and use it in security, not insecurity, but in my security. I want to use it to do battle for those that, like those two people, my teacher and my that partner that I sang with, they did battle for me, and I'm here today because of their conversations that they had with me.
That's wow. I didn't even know all that information, all those
Mm.
stories, and how incredible that is that two people, one a popular cheerleader that was your peer, and then a teacher cared enough that to see you for who you were and to help you see what they saw, which you didn't see because of your insecurity, and that plus a story from the Bible, those things that seem like they're what does it matter? What difference does that make? Made a huge difference. Made a life changing difference. And that's just a reminder to me that being able to see people and help them see their value and their worth can actually turn the tide for someone who's battling with their own insecurities and who isn't, whether you're a quote unquote nerd or not. People often, almost everybody has some bouts during their life about, what am I worth and does anybody care and am I valuable? The insecurities are kind of built into our growth system in some ways, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, oftentimes when I'll dress up like a nerd and I'll speak and they don't even know I'm trying to be funny, and it scares them half to death. I got so many stories about that. But while I'm wearing my nerd clothes, dressed up like a nerd, I will say the only difference between you and me is I wear my nerd clothes on the outside. You wear yours on the inside. And it
Mm.
might not look like a nerd, but you feel like a loser, a failure. You dress up like this on the inside. I at least am putting it up on the outside to let you guys know, hey, we are all nerds. We all struggle. We all have insecurities, and every one of us struggles. But that's part of life, right? That gives us something to overcome. It gives us something to conquer. So yes, I agree completely with that.
And it seems to me, like, because what I know of you now and known you since college, that that those those are defining moments, right? Where the cheerleader says, "Hey, I don't think you're a nerd. Let's talk." And the teacher says, "Be yourself out there. If they're going to laugh at you, laugh at who you truly are." These things sink in. They make a difference. And it seems to me that that has been part of your mission, right? As you've grown older, and you just described how you get in front of an audience now and you become the exterior nerd to help people deal with their own insecurities that are internal. It's a reminder to me that oftentimes the turning points in our life then become our mission, right? When we realize how someone else could help us, that gives us the permission, the power, the model, the belief system that, hey, maybe I can make a difference in someone else's life as well.
Yeah.
Did you make those connections in your own trajectory there?
Yeah, completely. And when you talk about the original story, origin AL story, right? We all have an origin. We all have a story, and nobody's story is more important than somebody else. Some stories might seem more dramatic, or might, what's the word I'm looking for there, Joe? Like more charismatic or larger than other people's story, but that doesn't make it more important, you
Right.
know? And like, I was when I grew up, I was going to go out there and I was going to be a traveling preacher. And I guess in some ways I kind of am, but there's so many people that said, I don't have a story because I didn't go do drugs. I didn't, I wasn't abused. I wasn't, and I recalled, respect me. And it's the first verse is, my life has a story. It's important to tell. Yours does too. It's important as well. So I'll respect me while I respect you, because this is what we're all made to do, because we're all strong when we do life together. So don't put others down just to make you look better. So every one of us has a story that's important. The problem is those behind the camera, whether it's social media or regular media, they tend to pick the story, the people that are more, I don't know, boisterous, more famous, more whatever, but that's not always reality, right? And truth is, Joe, you and I could show up with a camera and we could film anybody. That's kind of what our one of our missions are as brother studios with Mojo Studio and Happy Life Studio, is to um, find people that they're just regular people, but they're heroes, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
not going to make a blog. They're not going to make a podcast, but we can highlight them and we can make a podcast with them. And so what I'm trying to say is that we could take anybody's story. If we interviewed them for half a day, figured out their stories, we added the right music in the background, we had the right Hollywood cameras, the right Hollywood settings. You can make anybody's, like, I mean, you add a soundtrack in the background and you amplify this and highlight that. And, you make these people, these stars that they're portraying, these people, incredible people. Well, they are, but to take a life of 40 years, a life of 80 years, a life of 16 years, and put it in a 2-hour movie, you're going to have to pull out the highlights. You're going to need to add the music to make you feel what took them years to get to. In other words, what I'm saying is every one of our origin stories are movie worthy. They're
Yeah.
all just as important, and we've got to stop trying to fit in when we were made to stand out, to be who we are. We are all our origin stories. We are all original. And so we got to stop trying to be like other people. That comparison monster. You and I have talked about that personally between the two of us.
Right.
You know, it's a brutal monster, and it's a punk, and it's a bully, and we just need to shut that thing up. And that's one reason why I put on my nerd gear and sing my nerd songs, because it's my way of punching that sucker in the throat. Because it's a ugly, and I still struggle with it some, but not like I used to. Man, I'm way better than what I used to struggle with. So.
Wow, so good, Stephen. And I just want to highlight what you said. That um, the stories that are really epic stories that have been made into movies and books, these aren't people that were born, as Abraham Lincoln, as we know
Right.
him, or as Rudy, the guy in the Notre Dame team.
Yeah.
These are all normal people that grew up with their own origin story, that made choices, that learned, that stumbled, that made mistakes, and that needed help around them, to use your acronym, of people like the cheerleader and like your teacher, who helped them see their potential, and then they believed it and took actions along those lines, and then felt called to do something, extraordinary. But every extraordinary is from an extraordinary person, and every person is extraordinary because there aren't two people alike, right?
Yeah.
There's no two humans in the history of the universe, nor will there ever be, that have exactly the same story. So every story is extraordinary, but I think we buy into this comparison monster you're talking about that says, well, somebody else is extraordinary, that means I'm ordinary. There is no ordinary human being. Right?
Right.
That's a
Right.
false narrative.
And the problem we have too is that the comparison monster is, I usually compare if I'm egotistical, I want to feel better about myself, or if I'm insecure, right? We don't compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges, or onions to onions for that matter, right? I'm feeling like an onion. I'm feeling like insecure in this area. So who do I find? Someone who's good in that area. So now I'm comparing my weakness, my onion, with their apple. I'm comparing my weakness with their strength. That's
Mm,
not healthy at all.
right.
Find their weakness and compare your strength to their weakness, or compare across the board, right? And if they are better in that area, they have weaknesses too. So, and it's just as wrong for me to, feel better about myself by stepping on the back of others, by going, well, at least I'm not like them, at least I'm better at this than they are. And sometimes when we feel insecure, we want to feel better about ourselves, so we compare our strengths to other people's weaknesses, and that just, it's not fair. You're always going to come at the short end. What Einstein said something along the lines of, you know, a fish can swim, a fish is a genius, right? It can swim like nothing else. But you tell a monkey is amazing, right? Or I'm butchering the thing, but the concept is, but you try to tell a fish to climb a tree, and it thinks it's an idiot,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
And we're all, some of us need to live in that, quote unquote, that ocean, because we can swim, we can't climb, right? But when we start comparing ourselves to others, it's like a fish comparing himself to a monkey. You take that monkey and throw it in the ocean, now the fish is the genius, and
Yeah.
truth is, we all have something that we've learned in a way that no one else has learned it, and we can help others. The other thing I'd say about the epic stories that you started talking about is every one of those epic stories, in my opinion, have something in common. They had somebody to show up in their life and help them, push them,
Yes.
put them
Right.
on the platform. Even a lot of the people that, so many few people made it all on their own, right? They had somebody help them. That's the legacy movement. And I had a teacher and I had a student, and now I want to cry, but now, I speak in schools, when I'm able to encourage them and look in that kid's eye in an assembly and all of a sudden just say, you're valuable. When I lock eyes with that kid and I can feel love coming out of me, I can feel value coming out of me into that kid. They're like a sponge and they're soaking it up. They'll sit around all day long and listen to talk, not listen, wait to talk to me, because they were so moved by that assembly, which is, I'm so humbled by that, right?
Yeah.
But that's Michelle. Michelle owns that. That's because, one, she was probably lying through her teeth. I don't think you're a nerd. How could she not think that about me? But when I look back at my life, I think, I felt I was this terrible thing in high school, this big nerd, but I'm like, I bet I wasn't like I thought I was. And the same is true with us today, man. I think we just are so sure that people are thinking this or that about us. I'm not so sure that we're even on their radar screen, honestly. But
Exactly. Yes.
insecurity, it's like a magnifying glass.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I love what you just said at the end there, that oftentimes when I think somebody's thinking one thing or another thing about me, very likely they're not thinking about me at all. They got their own life. They got their
Right.
own worries. They got their own insecurities, right? They're probably thinking, what's Joe thinking about me? Or who knows what. But you're right. And it was, I think it's attributed to one of our past presidents, I think or the other Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, that comparison is the thief of joy. We've talked about
Yeah.
this as well,
Yeah.
because there's really no great outcomes with the comparison. Either I will feel superior and then become arrogant, or I will feel inferior and become insecure. right? So the only comparison really is the only healthy comparison is, am I learning? Am I growing? And even that's rarely in a straight line. It's not like from the lower left to the upper right. Growth is all over the map, as you know, and sometimes growth is being stuck in the mud where you can't see which way is up.
Yeah.
And that by finding your way out, that's what growth looks like. But there's all these, as you've talked about, there's all these narratives that go through our own head and our own hearts, because we're always asking the question, do I fit in and do I have value? But the problem is then we finish that phrase with compared to somebody else, right? And
Right.
our weakness to their strengths, etc.
Right.
So Michelle and do you remember the teacher's name, the music teacher
Yes,
that?
Mary Lou Simler was her name, and
Yeah,
Michelle Platts. Yep. And
yeah,
I don't remember many things, but I remember them.
that's so good. So, and that was during your high school days.
Correct.
So then you made a decision to go to North Central, where you and I met. Was that um, was that with a particular career path in mind, or how did you end up at that particular
That's a
school?
great question. I lived in St. Cloud, Minnesota with my parents. And when I graduated, I went to St. Cloud State for a year, and I took some music classes, some art classes, because I just loved art. I love music. And I think that's one reason also why I struggle with a little bit of insecurity, because I'm a feeler. That's what makes me that thing that I have to fight against. I struggle with insecurity. A lot of artists have that,
Yeah.
because you have to be sensitive to be a good artist, in my opinion. To be a good musician, if you're sensitive, that feeling comes through that. And because of that, we're susceptible, and that's a whole other podcast, but we're susceptible to that insecurity. So, but I took music classes and art classes because I just thought, well, I didn't know what to do with my life. And I remember somewhere along the line that I just thought, I'm going to go to North Central. It was a Bible college at the time. And I just thought, I don't know, still don't know what to do with my life, but if I can be around a Bible college where I'm a preacher's kid, so I'm like, I can at least learn about the Bible, learn about God. And if nothing else, I come out of there closer in a relationship with God than anything else. But I remember one Sunday after my dad got done speaking on a Sunday morning, and I was so moved. It was like, this might not make sense to a lot of people if they don't ever experienced something like this, but when God shows up in your world, man, it kind of rocks you. It's like, and when you see a good movie and all of a sudden you're touched, that's God showing up, trying to communicate with you, trying to say you're
Mm.
valuable, trying to. So, but I was so moved. I walked all the way home. It took me all afternoon to get home. It was a long walk home, but I was just hurt. I hurt for all the kids in my high school, and I hurt for everyone that was my age. And I just asked God if I could help. And when I went to North Central, I remember I was also moved after one of their chapel services. And I remember hanging out there for hours. I just couldn't move. I just sat there, and I was just hurt. And I just said, God, there's a lot of pain out there.
Mm.
Can I help? And I felt like God said, yeah, you can. It's like I volunteered to help. And ever since then, I just said, I want to make people laugh. When I went to North Central, someone said something to me, and it's so true. It's like, when you go off to college, you can be whoever you want to be. You can be your true self. And after Michelle's conversation with me and Mary Lou Simler's conversation with me, I just said, I'm going to be me. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to be me. If they're going to reject me, they're going to reject the real me, not the fake me.
Mm.
So I had a goal, and it was a small college, around 800, 1,000 people, something like that. But my goal was to somehow, whether physically or emotionally, just inspire. Somehow I was going to touch every person on that campus. I wanted to somehow pat them on the back or say hi to them as I'm walking by. I wanted to somehow make everyone in their life at least one moment feel better about themselves. And that was a goal that I had. And the whole nerd thing started from, we went to one of the first games, and by the time you got there, our games are pretty jazzed, right? Well, I think it's because me and my buddies, honestly, this might sound egotistical, but we really helped with that, because
You
we went to
did.
the game and it was the most boring. I grew up learning that the Bible said stuff like that. God loves life. God is life, right? He came to give us life and life more abundantly. In God's
Yes.
presence is fullness of joy. All these scriptures, right? So I'm like, Bible college full of 1,000 people that profess to believe in God. This is going to be awesome, right? And when I was in high school, man, our coach in high school, Mason City High School, that was before I went to St. Cloud. He ended up coaching the Badgers, and so when we had football in our high school, man, all day long, man, we'd have, like, one time we had a casket of the school. We were playing Waterloo, that's where Napoleon met his Waterloo or whatever, right? So we had a casket with pallbearers. Football players were pallbearers all day long in the commons area, and they would switch out during, but they never wouldn't smile. They would just, and when they brought that casket in for the assembly, the place went nuts. Like talking about, I mean, we dress up in zoot suits. We would bring cases of toilet paper. When there was a score, man, toilet paper was flying everywhere. I mean, we threw a party when we had football. And
Yeah.
there wasn't a whole lot else to do in Iowa except watch corn grow and trucks rust and the bank sign change, right? So Friday night came around, man, we had football. So I'm excited. We didn't have football at North Central, but we had basketball. So I'm like, bring it on. And we went there, and there was like a handful of people, and there half of them were doing their homework. I'm like, oh no. I went back to my room with my buddies. I said, listen, I'm completely serious. We either change a school or we change schools. I said, I'm not going to be a part of a school that has life like this. There's no way. So we spent all week long before the next game going, what should we do? Well, we got to dress up like we did in high school. My one buddy went to high school with me, so he was my roommate. So we're like, what are we going to do? We got to dress up like something. We kept coming up with ideas, and we didn't know what to dress up like. And then I found out, I said, who are we playing? They said this school, I won't say the name of the school, but they were 20 years behind. There was another Bible college, and they were just like, the girls still wouldn't even wear shorts for basketball. They still wore skirts, right? Like skirts and shorts. And
Right.
And I said, let's go dress like them. Let's go dressed like nerds, which wasn't hard because all I had to do was take my old clothes out to do. But I'm like, if we dress up like a nerd, because every time we'd say we could dress up like this or that, but I was like, but then people think we're dressing up to be cool. And I don't want people to think we're dressing up to be cool. I want people to know we're dressing up because we want to bring life to this place. It's not about us. It's about everybody. So from then on, that started the whole nerd movement, man. We dressed up like nerds at every game. And I'm telling you what, within a year, in fact, my son went to the same school. And as I was taking him, his first day in college, I was walking down the hallway, and one of the presidents, vice presidents, pulled me in their office. And I was like, oh, I mean, you can't get me in trouble now. I mean, like,
again, here we go again.
Exactly. It's like, just like the good old days.
Right.
We got a little bit of trouble there because they didn't know how to handle all the life. They thought anyway, they pulled me in and said, Steve, of all the years I've been here, they were there when I was a student. They said there has never been a time when you nerds, and you were part of that team, Joe, you joined us right away. And because that's who you are. You like to make people laugh. And so we changed the culture of that school by kind of making fun of ourselves, by kind of, and I just love people that can laugh at themselves. So yeah, I don't know what question started all that, but that was a long tirade for you.
No, we're talking about getting into college. So that was a great answer. But there's really great points to pull out of that. And one is that by doing what you and your friends did, it wasn't just that you're going to change the culture, but you're giving permission, right, to other people to laugh at themselves, to laugh at you, to have fun. Because whatever voices inside their head were saying, I have to study, or I can't laugh, or I can't express myself.
I got to be serious. It's a Bible college, so I need to make sure that I'm serious. And
perhaps really? for their own insecurities or whatever voices inside their head. But there's this powerful principle that you're talking about, is that sometimes we can be the person that gives others permission to be themselves, to have fun, to see the world in a different way, to see there is a different possibility, rather than just accepting the status quo or what seems like the peer pressure. Well, that's what everybody else is doing, so I guess that's what I'm supposed to do as well, right? It's those, I've heard it said, like when a pot is bubbling or boiling, there's a few bubbles that come up to the surface first, and once they do, then all the other bubbles start following. Like, oh, it's okay to do that. And so I just love that visual that from your life, that you and your friend says, let's be the first bubbles to the surface and give people the other permission, other people in the room permission to laugh, to have fun, to clap, to bring life. And you're right, Steve, I came after you, but by the time I came, there was already this sense of joy and fun and party in the stands during the basketball games. And it wasn't because the team was so great, because it wasn't, but it was really about the permission that you were giving and the impetus, right, to others to say, hey, we're here, we're together, we're watching the game. This is, if there's ever a time to have fun, this is a time to do it. And you gave permission to do that, you and your friends.
Imagine where we would be if we all just tried to make one person laugh every day, and maybe some people are not comedic, right? But you don't have to be a comedian to make people laugh or to make people smile, and I think the other thing about that too is that I'm focusing on other people. And it's very easy for me to, like anybody else, I guess, but it's very easy for me to focus on myself. But when I realize like I'm here to make somebody laugh or make somebody feel better about themselves, now my focus is no longer, on me. It's on other people. And I just feel like our world would be so much better when you laugh. I mean, when I would speak at places, that I use that as my secret weapon. When I became a youth pastor, they brought me in as a youth pastor because the pastor before me had blown it in a big way.
Mm.
And he actually had an affair with one of the youth leaders. And so these kids are like, screw this, forget God, forget any youth pastor that comes in here. And they brought me in. It was really cool because the leader, the pastor of the church said, Steve, can you come in and fill in for me while I find somebody? I don't want a week to go by with them not having somebody there. These kids are very vulnerable right now.
Right.
I
Yeah.
need somebody here. So I didn't know any better. I just showed up in my nerd clothes and I made them laugh. And 6 years later, when I left, I was going to leave within a month, right? I stayed there 6 years. And finally, when it came time to go, I had kids tell me, Steve, I wasn't going to like you because I got burned by my youth pastor and I couldn't stand God. I couldn't stand youth pastors. I wasn't going to like you, but you made me laugh. And when
Mm.
you make somebody laugh, it's hard to hate them. You can't hate somebody when they're making you laugh, right? And I just think, man, if we want to go far in life, we just need to learn how to make people smile, make people laugh, right? Lighten up a little bit. You've got some really cool lines on light or lighten up. I can't remember what they are, but Joe, what are those? You've got some, I hope I'm not throwing you on the spot here, but you've said some really cool things about enlightening or lighting others up. I just think that we need to lighten people up and stop taking ourselves so serious. So you remember any of the lines that I'm talking about?
Well, I remember that I was just contemplating one morning this idea of lightness, right? And lightness can mean lack of heaviness, or it can mean like lightheartedness. And I just got this idea: lighten up. It's like casting off the weight, the things that weigh you down, right? Getting the weight of your shoulders. If you lighten up, you feel less heavy. And you also lighten up means you shine more, right? So lighten up gives you a chance to beam, to illuminate, to let that inner glow shine, and you don't feel so weighted down. So lighten up it's a win-win in my in my mind. There's so many benefits to that.
Yeah. In fact, if we're feeling heavy, what's the first thing we do? We try to lighten that load, right? We call it lighten the load. So we try to get rid of the stress. We try to but it's almost backwards. We're putting the cart in front of the horse. And you can still move the cart and the horse by flipping them around, but it's a lot easier if you do them in the right order, right?
Right.
And to me, to lighten the load is if you lighten the load of somebody else, then your load will be lighter. And when I'm
Yeah.
stressed out, when I'm heavy, it's a sign now. I've been around a long time. I'm pretty old, right? So it's a sign now that when I'm heavy, like, wait, there's your sign. Bill Engvall would say, there's your sign. When I'm heavy, I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe I need to make somebody else feel better. I need to make somebody laugh, right? And when
Mm.
I make somebody else laugh, it causes me to laugh, right? And when I make someone else happy, this is a thought that I've been processing lately. I came across it, and it's so good. But it talked about those that chase happy never find it. You
Mm.
can't find happy when you're chasing it. But if you
Because it
try to
keeps
make
running
somebody
away.
else, what's that?
In my mind, it's because it's like you're running away. If you chase something, it runs away.
That's true. That's true. And we spend so much time buying this, becoming this, moving here, getting that, to be happy, right? But if you chase happy, you never find it. And that, like I said, I'm still processing this myself.
Sure.
However, if you will try to give happy away, it will find you.
Mm.
It's like that rubber ball. You throw it at something, it's going to bounce right back at you. And so, you know, that's why I say I'm a happypreneur that's here to navigate, activate, and advocate your happy. Is that a lot of people, so many people, I would say really almost everybody, if not everybody, is trying to be happy. But why are so few people happy? Because we're going about it the wrong way. We're chasing happy when happy is chasing us. If we would just stop for a minute, make somebody else laugh, make somebody else's day, do something nice for them, tip them a little bit extra, give a high five them, give them a wink, open the door for them, send them a text, hey man, I like your shirt, whatever. We will find that that's when happy finds us. When we decide, instead of chasing it, instead of trying to acquire it, we give it away. That's when we automatically have it. It just appears. And you can't give it away fast enough, because the more you give it away, the more it comes back to you. And so I just think that is such a great idea to lighten up, lighten somebody else's load, and then your load will be lightened as well.
As our listener Krista just said, life is too short to walk around being a grump. Isn't that
Yeah.
the truth?
And Krista, I know Krista. Krista is amazing. I've spoken to her to camp for so many times, and Krista embodies this. Nobody does it better than Krista. Krista is one. When I met Krista, the director of the camp said this to me. He said, and Krista, I think I've told you this before, but he said, there is nobody nicer than Krista. She is one of the sweetest human beings on the planet. And Krista, of course, she's going to agree with it because Krista lives it. She's the sweetest person, probably the sweetest person I know. If not the sweetest, then one of the top five. I mean, she is a super sweet person that spends her life making other people better and feel better about themselves. And that's why she's such a happy human.
That's so good. Yeah, it's funny because I know when I get down, when I get weighted down, we're talking about lighten up, right? When I get weighted down, the tendency, the natural inclination is to hunker down, right? To
Yeah.
withdraw, to pull everything in, and try to withstand whatever the pressure is alone. But there's this old phrase that we often forget is that many hands make a load much lighter because you can imagine if a lot of people are carrying something, it's not as heavy as if the one person's carrying it alone. And so I love the fact that you've made it your mission through your words, through your actions, through your antics, to lighten the load of someone else, knowing full well that when you do that, it lightens your load as well, right? It
Yeah.
spreads out all of the weight between many hands, many faces, to make it lightens it up for everybody.
Yeah. I saw this quote the other day that said, a trouble shared is a trouble halved.
Right. Yes.
And you reap what you sow, you harvest what you plant. And we all want people to give us a break. Well, then the best way to do that is not to try to go out there and get people to give us a break. The best way to do that is to give other people a break. We want people to see our weaknesses, but go, wait a minute, I understand. You don't know who I am. We just give me a break. Well, then we need to do it with others. If we're struggling financially, then instead of trying to get people to give us money or try to find a way to make more money, what if we kind of flip that on its head a little bit and said, I want to be generous with somebody. I'm going to give some money away. Or if you don't have the ability to give money away, then what about give your time, your talent away, your heart away? Give, if you need something, then give that. Don't chase that thing, but give that away and watch that thing just naturally come to you. And now you both, are doing better.
Yeah. Yeah. The very simple illustration that comes to mind is a hug. When you give a hug, you get one
Yeah,
automatically. And then it's
that's
both
good.
people wins. It's a win-win on both sides.
Yeah.
All right. So let's fast forward a little bit. You get out of college and now you've got ambition to change the world rather than just change your college. So how did that unfold for you? How did you develop after college?
Well, I got out of college and I just realized that I had a burden for the youth of America and I want to help the youth of America. And I was going to do that by traveling and speaking, camps, churches, youth groups. And I'd speak anywhere, any place that had me come speak, I'd speak because I'm a messenger. I just want to share the message that I have. But I also said I was going to be who I was. And I'm a very unique individual. Joe, I'd show up and I had a lime green suit that my cousin gave me. And it's a funny story because it's a
Love the story.
polyester lime green suit. I still have the dumb thing, right?
Yeah.
And my cousin, who was super cool, I looked up to him. He was quite a bit older than me when I was growing up. He still is, I guess. But, and he was an architect. The guy was just sharp, man. He was tall. He was a good looking dude. I just looked at him like, wow, Well, he had this girlfriend and this girlfriend made him 2 suits. She made him 2 suits. One was a baby blue polyester suit. One was a lime green polyester suit. And he broke up with her like 2 weeks later. I'm like, you make someone a lime green. Of course, that was back in the late 70s, right? When lime
Right.
green was the color, And guess what? I'm the preacher's kid. So I get the hand-me-downs, and I got that suit, right? But like I said, I started using that to my advantage. And when I would go to a camp that never heard me before, dude, I would come out, they would introduce me and I wouldn't come out. And I'd finally peek my head around the corner and my hair is greased down like alfalfa, the little rascals with the little thing sticking up in the back. And you've
Right.
seen it, right? And I
Oh
come
yeah.
out in this lime green suit and I'm talking like this and I sing a stupid song. And, there was a song that was very popular back then in the Christian circles called Father's Eyes, right? And I'd come out and I'd sing Father's Thighs instead, and when the music is starting, it's just kind of slow, cheesy. It's a youth camp, right? And they're expecting something fun. Come out of there and just punch them in the face right away, so to speak. I'm saying, come out there strong, right? Be funny, make them laugh, right? Make them like you right away. But I'd come out and I would sing, and the music is being slow, and I may not be every mother's dream for her little girl. And the moment I get to that point, then these kids are kind of like, wait a minute, this guy is making fun. This is going to be a great week. But I had counselors tell me their students sitting next to them said, I'm not staying. There's no way I'm staying this week. I can't. If that's the speaker I have to listen to every night, But
In the first few
anyway,
seconds. Yeah.
So I was speaking at church camps and all that type of stuff. I was called to the Youth of America, and I wanted to make them laugh. I wanted to make them think. I wanted to let them know how valuable they are. I still have a dream that I want to start a ranch someday for preachers' kids that could just show up with all their anger, with all their hurt, with all their pain. And we've got some of us there that just love them. We just let them be who they are, right? And that's kind of a theme of ours, just be you, right? You and I know that theme.
You be you. Yes.
Right. That's a whole other story in itself. But at some point, because my style is so unique and so different, I don't fit in to the regular guys that speak. Most guys that speak the public, or even the church circuit, more likely, TED Talk, all sorts of different strange individuals, unique individuals speak at TED Talks, but churches, they all look the same, right? I didn't look that way. And after a while, I just didn't get the churches to have me back. I wasn't the hot new commodity anymore. They found the next hot new commodity. And a lot of churches they're kind of fickle like that. They find the guys that are hot. And what do the big churches have? And what are those churches? We want to have those guys. And I just didn't play that game. Either that, or maybe I just wasn't very good at what I did. I mean, I thought I would see the lives that were changed. And, but they stopped having me come and speak as much. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? I'm a messenger with no place to speak. And then one day I thought, man, and that's a whole nother podcast in itself. So I won't go into all the details of that, but I just saw the internet and I said, why am I not utilizing the internet? Why? I felt like God was revealing to me, Steve, why are you letting them be the boss? Why are you letting them hold the keys to your kingdom? Why are they the only place you can? There's a thing called the internet. Why don't you get your butt out there, your face out there, and start sharing on the internet? So at 50 years old, I'm reinventing myself. I said, fine. If I can't speak at churches, fine. I'll speak at church. I'll speak anywhere that'll have me, right? But if no one else is going to have me, I'm in charge of my own internet. And that's how we started Happy Life Studios. I remember the first time I did Happy Life Studios, I was driving to a church to speak that morning, and I still didn't know what I was supposed to speak about. And that was a big deal, man. Pastors, we spend hours and days, and sometimes Saturday night we get all nervous because we got to preach the next morning. We got to make sure that we ring that bell, right?
Right.
Because there's a lot.
You are the keynote. That's right.
Right. And if you don't ring the bell, they never have you back, or they're not going to come back to your church or whatever. So we put this crazy pressure on ourselves. And I remember driving, and it was Sunday morning. I was like, God, please, can you tell me? I've been asking for days, and he wouldn't tell me. And I'm finally like, God, can you tell me? And I felt like God was just revealing to me, Steve, can we just drive? I'm like, no, we can't drive. If you tell me what I'm supposed to speak about, then we can drive. And he says, sure. No, I just want to hang out with you. So it's like, fine. I don't know what so I'm just embarrassed. I'm angry. I'm scared, right? I don't know what I'm going to speak on. I'm speaking to a group of people. I don't know them, and I don't know what I'm speak on. And all of a sudden a song came on my music player. I don't even know why I had it on there, but I love the Partridge Family growing up, that old TV show, hello world, there's a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, as I'm doing that song, and all of a sudden now I'm in the moment, and I'm enjoying it. And then I felt like God was like, talk about that. I'm like, yeah, right. So I kept singing, and then I got to the part that says, we had a dream, we'd go traveling together. And that was a dream that I had. And that's what I was doing. And God's like, you're doing the dream. We had a dream that you go traveling together. We spread a little love, and then we'll keep moving on. Something always happens whenever we're together. So get a happy feeling and start singing the song. And God was like, he couldn't have worded any better than that. He's like, Steve, we had a dream. You're doing the dream. Every time we go someplace to speak, I'm with you. Things happen. So will you just sing along with me? And like, you didn't talk back then. You didn't talk about being happy. That wasn't the thing. You could talk about joy in church because that was a spiritual word, but you didn't
was a Bible word. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, and then so I spoke, and it was funny. Before I got ready to speak, the pastor got up there and said, hey, I want you guys to shake hands and greet each other, say hi to each other. And he went back in the sound booth. He was going to play a different song while they did that. But instead, he decided last second, the song had just come out, the song by Farrell. And no churches played secular music back then. That wasn't a no-no. God luckily has changed his mind on that since, right?
Yeah.
I say that tongue in cheek, obviously, but and he put on the song "Happy," right? And I
'Cause
couldn't
I'm
believe it. I'm
happy.
like, yeah. How does the song go again? Um,
Because I'm happy.
and I'm listening to that song, and I hadn't even heard it yet because it was brand new. And I went, "What song is he just playing?" And God was like, "See, I told
Yeah.
you." So I
Confirmation.
spoke happy that day, and it hit it. It hit, man. And then for the next I don't know how many weeks, every time I spoke, God say, "I'm going to talk about being happy." And I started even a teaching series off of it. I sell the CDs to this day, or the tape things. They were CDs back then, but um, anyway, I couldn't stop teaching about happy life. Everywhere I went, I felt like that's what God was saying. Talk about happy life and being happy and the importance of being happy. And then I sat down with my buddy, friend Tony Piantine, and he had this program on his computer. Next thing I know, he's sitting down in lime green because of my lime green suit, right? And the logo that we have, the little lime green, guy. Let me see. You can see it on my
Like the happy
laptop.
face
Can you
guy.
see it? No, you probably can't. Anyway, the little line, I'm trying to see if I got one. But anyway, he created that logo for me. And then it just took off. It's almost by accident. I'm trying to write a book called The Accident Driven Life, because most of my life, it hasn't happened by purpose. It's happened by accident. If you just do the right thing, the right things happen, right? Not always, right? But if you just try to make people's lives better, you try to be a good person and do the best thing you can, guess what? Things are going to fall into place that you never planned for. And that's kind of how Happy Life Studios got birthed.
That's amazing. That's a great story. Such a great
Thanks.
story. And we only have a few minutes, but I have talked to you enough, Steve, to know that you really do want to hear what God has to say. You do want to do, what God would want you, because you want to be the most effective, most impactful person that you can be. And you've told me countless stories where through a song or a movie or an unlikely billboard, something happens, where God gets your attention and is speaking to you through the media. Do you have a particular story comes to mind? I know you've got a zillion of
Oh
them,
man,
but
I got so many stories.
yeah,
Um,
seems like that happens to you pretty regularly, right?
it does. And I think God made us so he knows how we function. He knows how we function. So why not read the manual, right? Why not ask the person who made you? The person that creates a tool knows how the tool works the best. The person that creates something online knows how that thing works the best. And so God is always speaking. I just don't think we're always listening. And
Mm.
I think we expect God to sound like Samuel L. Jackson, or, Darth Vader, like, okay, whose mouth voice
James
was
Earl Jones, yeah.
James Earl Jones, some big spiritual moment. Religion, that's what religion does. It makes it big and spiritual, and ooh, and then we want to explain it. Oh man, I was in this moment. This music was in the, whatever, right? I mean, God speaks through jokes. He speaks through, I remember getting in the car and saying, God, all these dreams I have, they're not coming about. And I'm getting older in my life, and I'm going, did you really mean those? Or was I just thinking something up? Were those dreams really from you? Because everything in my life is pointing to the opposite right now. And I get in the car and I'm having this conversation and I get this desire. When I say God reveals something to me or speaks something to me, it's this desire I get, but it has this, it's a different desire than otherwise. It's got this different feel. And you only know if you've done it a couple times, and then you're like, I recognize that, right?
Sure.
And I had this desire, which I felt like God was speaking to me, which he obviously was. Now I look back on it in 2020, but I felt like, turn on the radio. I'm like, turn on the radio. I'm talking to you, God. I got to figure this out. I want to know. I want you to speak to me. And I just kept feeling, turn on the radio. I'm like, whatever. I'm trying to figure something out here. Turn on the radio. Fine. I'll turn on. What's it going to hurt? What's it going to hurt to actually follow through on that? So I turn the radio on, and right when I turn it on, if I wouldn't have stalled, it wouldn't have come on this point. But right when I turned it on, I didn't even change the channel. The station was on that. And right when I just got done asking God, are these dreams real? Or are they just me making it up? And God kept saying, turn on the radio, turn on the radio. He knew he'd have to ask me like 12 times before I'd finally do it. When I turned the radio, Joe, the very first sound out of the radio was Bachman Turner Overdrive. I think that's who it was, the group. But they said, you ain't seen nothing yet. And I'm just starting to jam, right? Oh, but baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
Here's something you're never gonna forget, right? And I'm jamming, and all of a sudden I got lost in what I was doing, and the best way I could describe it was I got this other feeling, almost like I didn't feel like God was jabbing me in the ribs with his elbow, but that's the best way I could describe it. It was all like God was like in the car seat next to me going, I'm like, what? Like, And then all of a sudden I realized what I was singing. God, are these dreams really for you? Are you really on? And God stutters. Oh, but baby, you just ain't seen. I'm like, how awesome is that? And I've got story after story
Yeah.
after story after story, almost on a daily basis. I'm playing word cookies, and it's rarely super spiritual and super and the music and the lights in the background. I get it when I'm playing games on my phone in the morning. Word cookies. I mean, I've got so many stories, and God is real, man. God is love. God cares about you. God made you, and He made you unique for a reason, and He made you weak for a reason, so that you could rely on Him, so you could rely upon each other. And I want to go full circle now as we close this thing off. But Joe, you talked in the beginning about how you came to me and asked if I could help you get Mojo Studio started. But I don't know if I've told you this, but what you guys that are listening or watching right now maybe not won't realize is that when Joe came to me, I was a pretty low point in my life. I'm like, why am I even doing what I'm doing? I'm not even making a difference. I'm not getting the likes. I'm not getting the follows, which since then I've realized, whatever. I mean, people are funny. They follow with all the likes, and some of the people that are saying the best stuff don't have the likes, don't have the follows. That's been my life story, right? And there's so many people out there that are like that. We've got to stop. We got to listen to something for the sake of what we're listening to instead of how many follows is like. Because if it's got a lot of followers, then he must be legit. She must be right on. I call BS on that. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of people out there that haven't had somebody support them or share their stuff. They didn't go viral. That doesn't mean that their origin isn't any more original, So I got lost there for a second. What was I just saying? How I was trying to close this whole thing up, but sorry, Joe. I got
Okay.
off on a tangent there.
So good. So
But
good.
yeah.
Well, I love that you brought it back full stream. And the one
Oh
thing
yeah,
that
thank you. That's what it was. It was
yeah,
just that I was feeling down because of all those things, because I wasn't getting the likes of the follows, which since then I've said that's just ridiculous. We both have realized that we can't go according to that, because that's like the comparison monster. I'll kick your butt. But when Joe, you came along and you simply asked me to help you, what that did for me, the happy level that created in me, that made me feel so valuable at that point. So the fact that we can be brother studios is just such a cool thing. And it's just so symbiotic. I think that's the right word, right? But this whole synergy that we have, we went to school together. We were nerds together back in school from something, that we were doing back in the day, and you showed up, and then all of a sudden now we're being nerds again, on old school nerds, and we're helping each other with our online content, and we're not popular, or don't have all the follows or likes, but we still have each other's friendship, and we still, I don't know, Joe, you just nerds together, baby. Nerds unite, nerds for life,
yeah. Well, as we pull this episode to a close, I just want to point out the thread that I've been a highlight of this whole interview is how the difference that we make is almost always one-to-one, right? We live in a society that makes us
That's
think
good.
that the impact has to be 1 to a zillion, and that like you said, if you don't have the likes and the
Yeah.
follows, that somehow it's invaluable. But the stories that you shared, and I think as I looked at my own life, when I was making comparisons, the big impacts have been one person being at the right place at the right time, saying the right thing, right? And we call those heroes. You and I
Yeah.
do. And it's an encouragement that you don't have to have all of the stuff to do that. All you have to do is be attentive and a desire to make a difference in someone's life. And you can. You don't have to have money. You don't have to have stuff. You don't have to have notoriety or fame or
Everything you
fortune.
have to have to do that, you already have.
That's right.
It's
It's
already
in you,
in you. Yeah.
right? Yeah, and I think the other theme that came out to me again, that's just a great reminder, is that happiness isn't something that you pursue to go find. Happiness is something that you generate, and you generate it by creating happiness in others' lives as well. So thanks for modeling that, Steve-O, and thanks for sharing
Thank
some
you,
of the
Joe.
highlights of your story. I've known some of it. Some of it I didn't know. I got to learn a little bit more about you today. For those that tuned in, I hope that you picked up the fact that whatever your story is, it's original. You are an original. And we know that the more rare something is, the more priceless it is. So
Yeah.
your
Come
life
on, Joe.
is priceless, right? So we hope that by hearing our story, it'll just remind you of how valuable you are and how powerful you are in making the difference in someone else's life. Until next time, this is Steve O'Hayes for Happy Life Studio and Mojo, Joseph McCarthy for Mojo Studio. And go do the happy, be the
Be
happy,
original, man, and make
be
somebody else happy.
right. That's right. Till next time, Mojo and Steve-O out.